significant reduction of costs when it comes to equipment for renewable sources. In terms of developing further projects in the energy sector, but also in other sectors, PPPs, I personally believe that it is good and it is important to also have the private initiative. I know that in the first panel we have heard various views, conflicting views, whether this is a good idea and whether this should be allowed. I personally think it should be, so I'm a bit weighing in a bit on the debate in the first panel. And I think it's important, especially in the underdeveloped regions where there is no real capacity to develop these projects by public partners by themselves. So I think it's important to have private initiative. Of course, there are legal provisions which actually oblige the public partner to offset any competitive advantage of the private partner who is giving the proposal. So in order not to make them more competitive because of this reason in the future tenders. So I think this is really important, and I think that at this stage of development, I think it's important also to keep the private initiative. Now, when it comes to procedures, and I'm going to talk now particularly about Serbia, I believe that a lot of you, even those who are not lawyers, know that there are different procedures for pure PPPs and PPPs with concession elements. So based on concession, where basically the private partner bears also the market risk. When it comes to these pure PPPs on availability payments, there you have a mandatory provision to use strict provisions of public procurement law. Even though you can choose the way you can do it, you need to follow, with certain exclusions, you need to follow provisions of the public procurement law, which makes it difficult, well, for the public authorities and also for us advisors when we are advising public authorities to structure deals. In particular, in an environment like we heard today, that there are no templates, there are no standards. So the risk sharing, particularly in complex projects, needs to be checked with the market and with the potential bidders, what is acceptable for them. So to do it in a rigid procedure is oftentimes very difficult. This was also the case. We have been involved in one project here in Belgrade. It is construction of four underground garages, but we have advised EBRD initially in the city of Belgrade. Now, we thought that it's, well, when you first hear about it, you think it's pretty simple. It's 4 garages. What can be so complicated? Now, when you dig in a bit deeper into the project, then you find out that it's city center, it's different locations, it's different phases of development. Because of the location, you can expect a number of potential archaeological findings, what we have saw in projects in previous times. Then underground infrastructure. Then you think, okay, what if it's not possible to develop one? How will it impact profitability and feasibility of the others? When do you stop? And it's really, really a complex issue. And of course, there are no templates which can regulate this. So having done this through a concession procedure rather than a public procurement procedure actually made our lives a bit more easier, because it made it possible for us to actually, on a non-discrimination basis, get an input from various potential investors and bidders. Lastly, I would like to talk about just one aspect of PPPs that a lot of people don't know about. Well, when I see that a lot of people don't know about, I immediately think of President Donald Trump, who says a lot of people do not know about, and then they say it usually follows with something obvious or something wrong. I hope that what I'm going to say is not going to be any of the two. I think that, seriously, I think that what is often neglected is the state aid aspect of PPPs. And this is something that is not talked about. And, well, there is legal framework, which is often neglected. For an example relating to it's services of general public interest, general economic interest, and there are strict criteria when we are talking about pure PPPs with the ability of payments, when the project does not need to undergo a state aid check. And these criteria are basically that the service needs to be described as a service of general economic interest in the law or by the entity who is actually paying for it. It needs to be clear. The structure needs to be put forward in advance. The compensation needs to be such to cover reasonable costs of the private partner, having in mind the risk of private partner that it is taking, and the IRR basically cannot be significantly lower than what is market standard for this type of sector. And these are criteria that have previously been set by the European Court of Justice. I believe it's Altmar case. It was quite a while ago. Then have been taken over by the EU Commission. And what is relevant, especially for us here, is that they have been implemented in legal frameworks in Serbia, Montenegro, and other countries in the region. And there certainly it's important to pay attention to them because, well, everybody knows if state aid has been granted contrary to the law, then it needs to be paid back. So this is quite a risk. And with this, actually, I would like to close what I've been saying. I'm open to questions, and thank you again for letting me participate.
No, this was extensive. I think that you should do a separate energy PPP training program within the Energy Law Association, definitely. Last but not least important, we have somebody from a country which has a new name, relatively new government, and most importantly, new projects and new opportunities. And also very wide-reaching experience. That is Mr. Nikola Bitrak of Consult and Mercados. So he will be talking, hopefully not as long as Milos, but along the similar lines about the... who am I to... So he will be talking about this interplay between energy and PPPs, but with North Macedonian angle, which is, I think, out of all the regional jurisdictions, and I spend most time now in the region rather than in Serbia, I think this is the most interesting one in terms of the legal framework and the willingness of the public sector to take some risks and to be rewarded. So Nikola, please, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much for the kind introduction. From the side of the name on the company and the country, yes, I'm still not used to see the new name, but we must learn with and live with it. As a matter of fact, from the other side from where I'm coming, so I'm coming from now North Macedonia, but I'm coming from the multi-international company, big group OF, and the part of the group is Mercados, who is very specified and focused on the energy transition projects and energy transition countries all over the world, from the Asia, Middle East, whole Balkan region, Africa and Latin America, and so and so. So it's with quite extensive experience in the PPPs, and not only in the development, also in the training, transfer of knowledge, capacity building, and so on. But I will speak later a bit, I hope we'll manage by my available time, a bit about the difficulties and what maybe we should do in order to push more PPPs. So from the side of energy, also I will not repeat my colleagues on this panel, but all are very focused and what I heard, very good open discussions. From the side of the energy where we are, we at least all know that we are facing with big problems. From one side, we are lacking or becoming to lack of base energy, and base energy mostly focused in the thermal energy, which is the thermal power plant are going to be closed or are going to be some rehabilitated with environment friendly equipments like desulfurization and so on. But at the end, from the other side, we have interconnection capacities and open market, liberalized market in almost all countries in the Balkan and Southeast Europe. The market is liberalized. That means that the price, it's not power purchaser's price, it's the price is on a market price. And when we see the entity itself with this huge investment in the big capacity, because we are coming to be to miss the big capacities, it is very difficult to be implemented from the side of the feasibilities, because of the big capacity means a lot of constraints, big efforts, a lot of problem with the environment, a lot of problem with the land acquisitions, which take a long time of implementation. From the other side, the growth of the sector economy in the country becoming NATO and European integrated countries is developing well, which means that the needs of electricity is going to be more required. And from the other side, the production of electricity is coming down. From the other side, we have IFIs. We have very extensive experience working with IFIs, EBRD especially, World Bank, AB, and all other banks, participating on almost all key energy projects in the region. From the other side, the banks are open to give the loan, but the loan is to the public utilities, which are mostly now regulated or semi-regulated or partially regulated, which means from one side they are social companies, don't like to increase the price because of to have some social peace, and from the other side they cannot come to big investment alone or getting only the loans, which means that they will get even bigger debt than their asset, and so the banks are not mostly giving the financing without state warranty, and to take the state warranty from the other side is also now a problem. And we are facing now with the other issue, how we come out from this maybe in the future gray zone, which means that PPP projects are some feasible to go ahead, but we are facing with many problems with the PPP in the past, especially in North Macedonia now. We have a project, maybe you mostly know because it's very famous, the project of Chebren and Galiște, hydropower plant, big hydropower plant, which I think almost 10 times was terminated. Why was terminated? Because not having proper strategy or proper model of PPP. From one side, we have a lot of public procurement laws involved, although we have a law of PPP harmonized by EU. But the model shows that the lowest price should win, and the lowest price has no power security or feasibility in the end. And so we spent 10 years with no single, only 10 years of the procurement process and termination again procurement. So one aspect from our side, maybe it's also to have some more coordination among all involved stakeholders and countries in the region, because we are going on liberalized market with all integration of the power sector in the open market. And from the other side, all the countries are trying to cover their own production capacity with some plans for investment within the country. So maybe the coordination among all countries or government in the PPP sector also is required. For example, my colleague and our partner from our project in Bosnia, currently ongoing, mentioned from Shonker, Belene. So Belene is the project which nuclear power plant in Bulgaria, which so far the government spent almost 5 to 6 billion euro. The mostly of equipment is bought and it is in the stock there waiting. So we can see that there is it's impossible the project to be stopped. It must be some solution to continue. And the solution is PPP, but what is the model for this PPP in order to be attractive? There was some ideas that many countries around participating in this project. For example, even our country and our government was thinking what is more important, to invest in some big hydro or base energy capacity in the country, or to participate in Belene as a 5, 10 or 20% being shareholder, and in order to get some 100, 200 megawatt of base energy. And with the interconnection development on the transmission system operators, it's not an issue that we can transfer the capacity to the country. So from this aspect, I think that we need to speak also more globally, but also internally between all the governments, how we coordinate and cooperate in the PPPs, because also there are many preconditions not settled from the side of all the PPP potential clients. They are facing with a lot of uncertainties, land uncertainties, documentation, missing of information, especially market analysis, market forecast, which is the base for the planning of the investment. And we have many, there are from one side investment open for the PPP, and from the other side many of the PPP potential tenderers are coming to us to ask us first before they think about to make a market forecast for them. So maybe it's also necessary to be more, and each country or each TSO has its own market forecast, which is not somehow, it's used for their own purposes and not shown on the open market or institutional level. So it's maybe one aspect is to have some regional model, market model, which is shown that everyone, it's easy to follow or to have knowledge in advance. Also the big problem is capacity of the, as we already spoke, capacity of the institution toward the PPP. And as a matter of fact, my colleague from EBRD also mentioned the auctions and the premiums. So we have now ongoing the project in Macedonia for the auction, EBRD finance project for auction of PV and wind. It is up to 200 megawatt PV. We are now sending the first pilot tender for auction.